Yeah. So, hey everyone, warm welcome to the 57th edition of
Yes.
uh, Geeknight.
Yeah,
Uh,
you can.
yeah. So, hope you guys are doing well, safe, and healthy. So, we got Team Bahmni with us tonight to share their insights about the product and the impact it has really had on the medical field. But before we get started, I'll just have a give a quick introduction about Geeknight. So Geeknight is a monthly event. It is a platform for tech enthusiasts to share the latest knowledge on the trending tools and practices that we follow in software development. If you guys are interested to present on this platform, we'll be sharing a link on the YouTube chats. So please refer to it, and we'll get in contact with you. And Yeah, so if you guys have any doubts during the presentation, please make use of the YouTube chat. We'll be answering it later. So with that being said, welcome again, Team Bapni, and uh, over to you, Dr. Akhil Malhotra.
Hi everyone. Thanks for taking out time to attend the Geek Night this week and listen to us. So we are a community of an open source HMIS called Bahmni, which was started by ThoughtWorks, but later on, an open source community was created around it, and the software was dedicated to become a digital public good. Let me share my screen and take you through the software a little bit and the history around Bahmni. So Bahmni was started in around 2013, end of 2013, and by end of 2015, it started to take shape, and from there on, a community was built around it with like-minded folks which wanted to contribute to open source software and for a general public good space, and as well as wanted to impact healthcare in a way that has not been imagined before in the Indian context, at least. So ThoughtWorks is not related with uh, just Bahmni in the open source healthcare space, but we have some open source technologies in the global health scenario. And from the hospital and clinical systems perspective, we have also contributed to OpenMRS and Bahmni. Of course, Bahmni being started by ThoughtWorks. Then we work actually across the spectrum. DHIS2 is another reporting and analytics tool where ThoughtWorks team has contributed a lot. And then we have also contributed towards health information exchange softwares, or a shared health record, as we may call it, for countrywide implementations. We will come to the case studies as we go through the presentation. So healthcare is not just about the hospital and the data analytics. It is also more about the community, uh, taking charge of their healthcare, and a big, supply chain, because that's how the medicines and the vaccines reach the needy. And OpenLMIS is another software that works on optimizing the supply chain for vaccine distribution in lower and middle income countries in Asia and Africa. And ThoughtWorks is a proud contributor to OpenLMIS as well. From the community health perspective and the emergency response, we have worked around, because that's the last mile, healthcare that is required. And MoTech and Rapid FTR have been, deployed and contributed to by ThoughtWorks. So right from the last mile healthcare till analytics on a public health level, open source technologies have made an impact, and ThoughtWorks has been a proud contributor to them. Moving to Bahmni specific, uh, I can say that this is one of the softwares which is very close to my heart, and it has been implemented in like 50 plus countries across 1,200 implementations and impacted millions of people. It has been a phenomenal made a phenomenal impact in the global healthcare space, and a software that started with Jan Swasthya Sahyog as a small experiment for them has metamorphosized into a big product and has been adopted by many Ministry of Health across the globe, including Ministry of Health at Bangladesh, Ministry of Health at Lesotho, at Cameroon, Mozambique, and many other African and Southeast Asian countries. Bahmni has also been adopted by a large humanitarian NGO which serves in the conflict zones. We cannot take their name though, but they are a big, adopter of Bahmni, and they also nurture Bahmni and contribute back to it. So, from impact perspective, we can say that these are the countries that we have covered with Bahmni implementations. Um, if you look at it, it is like every continent except Antarctica. Bahmni is being used and has made an impact. So, what is Bahmni? I mean, this is a hospital information system with various modules built around registration, like typical hospital, departments. So registration, OPD, radiology, lab, which is an LIS, which is integrated again an open source LIS. The nurses station, pharmacy, warehousing, billing. So Bahmni is, built with three open source systems, primarily, talking to each other, and the Bahmni sits as a wrapper on top of them. And these open source systems are Odoo, which is the ERP, and takes care of the billing, pharmacy, and warehousing. Then OpenLS, which is the LIS, majorly functions around lab, and Bahmni itself, which leverages OpenMRS as a medical record system, and Bahmni provides the registration and clinical modules which are based on top of OpenMRS. So Bahmni, started at Jan Swasthya Sahyog, and then another, noted implementation of Bahmni is in Nepal, where Bahmni was adopted by the Nepalese government as Nepal EHR, and a couple of hospitals are already live and using Bahmni in the remote parts of Nepal. The hospital that you see over here, the image. This is the hospital in Acham, which is on the western, higher peaks of Nepal, and it's a surreal place, and it's a place where people, had to walk more than 10 kilometers just to seek a doctor consultation. And with Bahmni being deployed in such places, it's heartwarming to see the impact that we have made in the quality of care, because people, need not carry their paper files anymore, and which you can see over here on the image on the right. It's very difficult to look for the paper files because people just lose them, and the hospitals wanted to keep the inventory with themselves, and it was becoming unmanageable. So Bahmni has made an impact here, and it's an integrated ecosystem which is very customizable, and at the same time it's localizable. By that I mean that you do not need to do a lot of code changes, or actual code to make Bahmni suit to a setting, uh, because every hospital is unique in their requirements in their you know workflows. And Bahmni has been built in such a manner that majority of the functions are customizable, and that can fit with uh, simple configurations can make the functions fit with a hospital's use case. And Swati will be taking you through the Bahmni's architecture and how you know, the customizations and configurations work. So yeah, Bahmni has been approved as a digital public good, and this is something which makes Bahmni a credible product in the open source space, and proves that open source products can do better than uh, you know uh, some proprietary products, and it's not something which is uh, something to look down upon, but a proven product, even though it's an open source product, can uh, be an asset to any government or any organization that is that you know. Um, so, a couple of features that I would want to take you through from Bahmni's perspective, from the patient registration to clinical lab, and fax integration is there, where a digital X-ray can be shown on the doctor's screen. So let's quickly jump into a short demo, and then I will hand over to Swati to talk about the technical details around Bahmni, because I suppose the folks over here are interested more in the technical stuff. So yeah, uh, let's do a typical journey of a patient that goes to the hospital. Like, every patient goes to the registration desk first, and from there they move on to meet the doctor, and then they go to the pharmacy, and eventually the billing part. So let's do a quick journey with a patient, and let's see how Bahmni's functionality works. So let me register a patient first. So another thing I want to point out is that on the previous screen that you saw, there are multiple tiles. So this is based on a role-based access system. I can see all the tiles because for the purpose of demoing, I want all my screens over here listed over here, so that I can show you different user roles. So yeah, let's go into registration. Over here, you can either create a new patient or search for an older patient record. So let's create a new patient and move on from there. Let me create myself as a patient. Let's say a bunch of stuff that a typical registration, hospital registration would capture, but all these screens are again configurable. So, the idea behind creating configuration based registration screen was that, like, you can see a bunch of stuff over here, like caste, education details, occupation. Not every hospital captures that, but some hospitals that work also as research centers capture these kinds of information. And that's something which makes them unique, because whatever information they will capture, they will do you know study on that. So every hospital is unique, and that's the reason why we thought that, okay, a configuration based product would be easier to roll out, and the product will be independent of very highly skilled people, so that it can reach at places where you cannot find highly skilled IT you know workforce. So yeah, this is the patient identifier that is generated for this patient in the first registration, and now this identifier becomes searchable across Bahmni, on the registration, on the clinical side, on the nurses station, lab, pharmacy, billing, everywhere. Now, this is the universal ID that the patient is going to use and keep with themselves. And this ID will be used throughout the lifetime of the patient's journey within Bahmni. So on the doctor's, dashboard, I'm already here listed in the list of patients that want to seek consultation. And this is the patient dashboard, where all the information that a doctor will be recording will be displayed over here. So let's do a consultation and see how that looks like. Uh, you know, on the consultation page as well, we have created everything which is configurable. All these forms that you see are configurable because every hospital has a different protocol to capture the clinical information. And we have tried to create, disease specific forms or department specific forms, which we ship as standard. But again, the hospital can choose to change the forms and ask questions what they prefer to ask. So let's say, my chief complaint is intermittent fevers, and the moment I start typing, there's a drop down which shows me the standardized metadata. Why standardized? Because it makes things easier for reporting and as well as interoperability. So let's say for 1 week, intermittent fevers, I would say in the evenings, and I'll move on to capture vitals. Let's say my pulse is 78. So anything which is marked outside of the range, the reference range, is marked as abnormal automatically. And I can say my BP is like 120 by, let's say, 90. So again, it marks it as abnormal. So based on my chief complaint and the questions that I'm asking the patient, I can start selecting the form that I think the patient might have, the problem the patient might have. So if I select a tuberculosis intake form, fever, any comorbidities, so all of these things can be recorded and can be displayed on the patient's dashboard. Moving on, the doctor can capture the diagnosis. Again, this shows you a standardized list because Bahmni conforms to the ICD, the SNOMED, and the LOINC standards. So let's say tuberculosis. It starts showing me options. If I click on save, it starts showing this thing on the patient's dashboard as well. Any disposition, if I want to tell the nurses to admit my patient, I can just select it from here and it will start looking, showing this disposition at the nurses station. Any orders I want to give to the patient, like let me say the patient needs a hemogram and they need a culture test. I can select the sample type and order a culture test, and basically any lab test that I want the patient to do. Yeah, this also has the radiology option. So if I want to order a chest X-ray, we can do that as well. So moving on to medications, because that's the last thing the doctor will do. They will write a prescription. Let's say, write them medication. Let's write them a losartan, 25 mg. Again, a coded list, which is mapped to a standardized metadata. Let's say the patient needs, one tablet once a day. Let's say take it for 10 days and come back for a follow up. And now if I go on to the patient's dashboard, I can see a bunch of detail that is furnished. And this detail will be furnished, like we can see that today is 19th of August. And if a patient comes for a follow-up after like 1 week or 10 days, we will see another visit marked here in a similar fashion, so that you get a longitudinal data uh, of the patient's problems, and you can have multiple dashboards to filter out your specific data, like a cardiology dashboard, or a TB dashboard, or maybe a neurology dashboard. You can configure those dashboards without coding, and a trends, a growth chart. So if you have a number of observations over a historical, longitudinal data, then you can see a graph over here. So yeah, so that's the brief, demo of Bahmni. I will now hand it over to Swati to take you through the architecture.
Sure. Thanks, Akhil. So, hi everyone. I am Swati. It's been quite some time I've been working with Bahmni, and I'll take you through the architecture of Bahmni. So, let me share my screen. Okay, so talking about Bahmni, we have two applications. One is an Android application. Another one is a web application, which we can browse through any of the browser. Let's talk about individual components that Bahmni is built upon or integrates with. So talking about the first one is OpenMRS. So basically, OpenMRS is the heart of Bahmni. Bahmni is built over OpenMRS. What OpenMRS is, it's a open source medical record system which was developed with a goal to give the developers a platform so that they can build their own clinical data application. That too with minimal Java and RESTful backend. So basically, Bahmni is built over OpenMRS. So Bahmni UI uses OpenMRS as the backend. So in a clinical environment, basically the uh, registration desk person would enter data for filtering the patient, or generating a new patient that will go in the Bahmni UI, which would leverage the OpenMRS backend to store the data, which will call a MySQL database, basically. So it's a Java application which runs over Tomcat application server. So that's how Bahmni integrates with OpenMRS. And the other system, that is OpenLS, that is basically a laboratory management system. So in OpenLS, we can enter any data for any kind of lab test. For example, blood test, culture test, like Akhil was talking about. This is the system where all of that data goes in. This is again a Java application which uses web technologies like JavaScript, HTML, Angular, JS. It basically uses Postgres database. So Bahmni integrates with OpenLS system for lab orders. The next component is Odoo. Odoo is an business management system, which basically helps in invoicing or inventory management, etc. This system is a Python-based system. Again, the UI is JavaScript HTML5, and the database that Odoo uses is Postgres. So This Bahmni uses for generating the invoices, placing inventories, and other kind of business management operations. I'll be showcasing a bit of these in a while. So the next component is DCM4C, which is basically an image manager, or I would say an image archive. This application basically contains standards like DICOM HL7 services, which are very important for storage, retrieval, and basically all the workflow that deals with healthcare environment. So this is pre-packaged and it's deployed within JBoss application server. This system uses Postgres as well as the database. So Bahmni uses this to integrate any radiology orders like X-rays and other things that can be captured in DCM4G systems. The last component is reporting. This basically is a Java-based application which can be used to generate reports out of Bahmni database, OpenMRS database. So in a clinical environment, we might need to see how many patients have been treated for a particular disease, or how many have been vaccinated for, say, COVID vaccination first dose, and those kind of information. So we can leverage a reporting system for accessing these kind of informations. So moving ahead, so how does all these systems communicate with each other, or how does any request is served within Bahmni? So Bahmni is built using front-end technologies like JavaScript, HTML, AngularJS, and we are moving towards migrating it to React.js now. Any new development is being done in React.js. So all these technologies require Apache web server to be hosted upon. So basically, all the requests comes to the Apache web server, and those are internally served by OpenMRS or OpenLS Odoo systems. So client places a request to Apache web server. Thereafter, the OpenMRS server or lab server or radiology server serves the request. Now, how do they communicate with each other? They basically use event-based mechanism, which is atom feeds. If in technical term, I say what exactly is an atom feed, it is a data file which basically describes the list of contents in a structured way, which can be transferred. So this is basically part of content synchronization protocol, which is based on RSS. Again, that is again a feed which contains the summary of updates, you can say, from a website, which means really simple syndication. So that is the heart of the communication between different systems in Bahmni. So how does exactly this atom feed framework work? It basically utilizes some of the tables which are used, some of which are used as publishers and others are used as consumers. Publisher table publish the list of events which needs, publisher tables have the list of events which needs to be published by the atom feed, and the consumer table includes the data such as already processed events, cached events, or the list of events which may have failed or couldn't be consumed for certain reasons. So each of these services can be consumer and producer depending upon the scenario. So for an instance, if we say in an hospital environment, we have a patient created in Bahmni. So that patient is created using OpenMRS. So here OpenMRS will be a producer of the information, and through the atom feeds, listening through the atom feed, OpenLS, Odoo, which was previously called Open ERP server. So and DCM4C, all these would act as a consumer. So talking about, say, an order is generated and data entered in OpenLS system, then OpenLS would be consumer, and the OpenMRS system would be OpenLS would be producer, and the OpenMRS system would be the consumer of those. Basically, these atom feeds keep in sync all of the data between the three all these systems. So so if I may say, as soon as a patient or an encounter or any other information, say a lab order is generated in OpenMRS, that gets synced to OpenLS, OpenERP, or DCM4G through atom feeds. So, and similarly, if any data is entered here, they reflect back into OpenMRS systems. So that's how it works. So we have certain schedulers which do listen at say after 15 seconds or say some configured time. They basically looks up for atom feed if there are new feeds to be consumed. So each scheduler looks for a particular type of a feed. Either it's being generated by OpenMRS, OpenLS, or OpenERP uh, based on its intent. And as soon as a feed is generated to be consumed, it consumes and updates those producer consumer tables to be reflected into the system. So that way, all the system keeps themselves in sync, and it is easy to enter data into one system and see that being reflected into another system. So this basically helps the hospital person or the clinician to not make a duplicate entry, or it saves an effort that once it is entered in OpenMRS, it is being reflected to other systems and similarly back to one. So that's how the systems are connected to each other. Moving ahead, if we talk about the data flow in Bahmni, the heart is Bahmni. So I would take it with a scenario. Say a patient comes into Bahmni and the receptionist logs him in. As soon as he is logged in, a feed would be generated for a new patient, and that would be consumed by all of these basically OpenLS, DCM4C reports, Odoo. So that patient would be reflected on all of those systems. So when say the doctor for that particular patient prescribes a lab order, so that lab order would be seen into OpenLS through the feed system as we discussed. So the data would flow from Bahmni to OpenLS and would be visible there. Say a technician in the lab sees a new order for a person who's already waiting in there. So he would perform certain blood tests or any other kind of culture or whatever the doctor has ordered for him, and enter the data in OpenLS system and say the order is completed. Once the order is completed, the results are reflected back into Bahmni. So here OpenLS would generate a feed, and to which Bahmni system would be listening to, and then those results are synced up into Bahmni system to be reflected at the patient dashboard. This way, the doctor doesn't need to ask for the reports manually, or in the patient dashboard itself, those reports would be shown to the healthcare provider. Similarly, say now the doctor wants the billing to be done for that patient. By doctor, I mean any health staff or any health worker. So he can log in into Odoo 6 system for generating a bill for the OPD visit or any kind of visit that he was in, and also the order lab order performs. He can log into the Odoo system and generate bills from there. So moving ahead, similarly, if the doctor, instead of a lab order, he ordered a X-ray, which is a radiology order, that would be shown through feeds into DCM4C software. Here, the staff present would see, okay, we have an order for the particular patient. They might perform that using the X-ray device that would sync up the reports in, say, the DCM4G server. So once that is done, a feed would be generated and that would be reflected back into Bahmni. So after all of these, we would have certain data in Bahmni record that this patient might have gone under this treatment, or this patient might have undergone some other treatment, orders and other things. Those can be consumed by the report system to generate reports. Basically, this uses Bahmni data to generate reports. That's how the data flows inside a Bahmni system. So let me, I'll share the Bahmni UI. Okay, let me first talk about OpenMRS UI. So as I just told you that Bahmni is built upon OpenMRS, and OpenMRS is the backbone of Bahmni system. But OpenMRS has its own UI as well, but in Bahmni context, it's just used for some administrative purposes, like we can add some attributes. Say we have currently we have doctor, sibling, parent, child, and these kind of person attributes. We can add more attributes, we can remove more attributes. We can manage the users, what are the roles, privileges, and all those kind of things, and maybe add a new provider, any visit type, add a new visit types, and all the administration work that needs to be done, we can do it from OpenMRS UI. So it just the OpenMRS UI in Bahmni context is just used for administration purposes. So going back to Bahmni and going to clinical module, as just Akhil just showed that we can create a new patient and say the doctor logged into the clinical module and goes to consultation for ordering, say, some lab orders for this particular patient, say TLC. We save it here. We go back here. We see that a lab order has been generated. We go to the laboratory. Okay. So we log in here. Okay, whatever Akhil just showed, those orders are shown here as well. We see that all of these orders are being reflected here with the patient names synced up. And if we say collect sample, let's add a little data in here. Okay. So here we say some random data I'm putting in for now. And I say the order is completed. So as soon as we say that this order is completed, feed would have been generated to which the Bahmni system would have been listening to. And all the data that I entered is reflected back into the patient dashboard. So the doctor would open the consultation tab again and would see all the lab results that were ordered uh, here only. We don't need to manually ask for those results or need to navigate to anywhere else. In the patient dashboard only, he'll be able to see those results. So a bit about, like I was saying, we can go to the stock inventory management. This is an Odoo system. We can say go to accounting, or we can generate a new invoice. We can go to inventory. We can ask for new things. We can do all of those things here. Like we can say customer is Swati, and we can add items, say paracetamol or ibuprofen, and we can generate the invoice. This is a draft invoice. We can open, pay, and do all the accounting uh, thing here. We can even purchase inventory. We can purchase inventory here. We can basically place orders. What are the delivery orders, and all of those things can be done here in Odoo system. And here also even the patient information and other things are being reflected. So moving back to the yeah, moving back to presentation. So talking about Bahmni architecture, we have discussed about how it can be used, how it integrates with different systems, and how it is built over OpenMRS, leveraging its endpoints. So basically, to summarize, Bahmni is an open source health information management system, which has event-driven architecture. Like I talked mostly about atom feeds, which are nothing but events, which makes it modular and extensible by leveraging or by subscribing to feeds. You can integrate or more systems with Bahmni, or make it more modular. Like you can just uh, you can just install one part of Bahmni, leaving other, whichever suits the work required. And it is configurable and customizable. As I showed you the OpenMRS administration tab, we can customize whatever is shown in Bahmni UI, most of the things, I would say. In
So, Swati, if I may add, recently there has been, uh, a community member, a couple of community members that demonstrated, using Bika limbs along with Bahmni instead of OpenLS. So they just use the Fire HL7 protocols to, replace OpenLS and instead plug in Bika limbs, which is another open source LIS.
Yeah. So yeah, any of the system like OpenLS, instead of Odoo, we may want to use, say, OpenTabs or OpenBravo, or any open source, or even some other paid services as well. We would just need to write a event listener to subscribe to these feeds and work around. It would be working smoothly with family system. So definitely agreeing to your point, Akhil, that Bahmni gives us all of these capabilities, making it more configurable and customizable as well. Moving ahead, talking about how easy it is to integrate, like we know that it is event-based. You subscribe to feed, or you generate feed. That's how Bahmni can be plugged into an existing system as well. Bahmni has a subscription mechanism. If say certain other kind of events are generated, Bahmni can just have a event listener, and it can also be plugged into some certain other system. What makes it more integrable is it follows. I mean, it has very easy implemented very easy protocols that are being widely used, which are REST, HL7 FHIR, HL7 V2 versions, which are widely used and easily available to the wider audience. And also it supports wide range of standards, which is IC10, SNOMED, LONIC, and PACS, etc. So with these, all these standards are widely used in the healthcare industry. Coming to technologies that are used in Bahmni, these are basically simple and cost effective. They're free and open source. They all have community support. They are easy to adopt, develop, and deploy. So basically, that was about Bahmni architecture. And moving ahead, if someone wants, moving ahead, if someone wants to contribute to Bahmni, how can they do that? As I said, the code base is open source. It is basically lies in a GitHub repository, which is this link. Though this repository is open source, you can use, extend, or modify, but ultimately the ownership lies with the OpenMRS and Bahmni coalition. You can fork with the fork and work around with it, but it is still open under the open source under the existing license. So coming to how we can submit a pull request or commit a message, it is basically only through pull request. And if you want to work with your personal account, that is okay. You can raise a branch, but the PR goes to the main Bahmni repository, to which the merged privileges lie with the product community members. Coming to the commit messages, or the way we should create the PR, it should have a proper Jira ticket number and certain context, which would tell about the context that what is the change that is inside that ticket. All these Jira tickets must be from one of the projects under Bahmni Atlassian.net. It has different projects to one of which the reader should be part of. Again, it's better to squash the PR commits into one before we merge the PR, because it is easy to compare the core code with the PR code. And how we can do that is listed here. We'll be sharing this, so you can go ahead and look in. Coming to, if you want to write your own extension that will not be supported extended by the Bahmni collision 14, then you write that in your own GitHub repo, and then the above guidelines wouldn't be applicable to you at all. Coming to the process, how exactly you should you can basically contribute to the product is say your team discover a feature to be implemented. You define and design that feature, and you create a product backlog with, say, some user stories and epic level stories. These all would be these all should be mentioned in the Jira tickets under any of the boards that I mentioned. And then maybe we can plan internally. The team can break down the task into their own Trello or Jira boards. Then the development can take place, and the increments can happen. Then probably you would have an internal demo within the team, and after that, a showcase to the community. We basically have pat calls for community meetings. So once you showcase the feature there, the community might have certain comments or feedback about it. After working all of that, the PR can be generated to the product and reviewed and worked upon. So that's about it from our end. Akhil, do you want to add anything?
No, nothing to add. And thanks for covering the architecture. I just want to urge people to join the Bahmni community on Slack and on OpenMRS Talk and engage with the community and contribute. It also adds to your credentials. I mean,
Yeah.
plus it makes an impact in the healthcare space.
Definitely agreeing to the point. Like Akhil mentioned, this has played a very crucial role in healthcare industry. If people contribute more towards it, it's definitely going to make more and lasting impact in the industry. So I would urge everyone to contribute as well. So here I would stop share and we are open to any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Swati and Akhil, for it. Bahmni seems to be having a really interesting tech, and the overall cost is much more commendable, and the impact it has had is also very visible. So for the doubts, we had a couple of questions about where to get the source code for and how people can contribute to the project. But I guess it was covered. So for the future viewers, we will be putting the links in the description for all uh, the readmes and everything, so that people can know how to find you. And yeah, and there was one more clarification. This is Bahmini is not limited to contributions from only thought workers. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one more thing that we wanted to clarify. And some of the people also had doubts on it. The general public can also contribute. So
Yes.
another thing we wanted to clarify. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a complete open source community around it, and the ThoughtWorks is just one contributor. Though it started within ThoughtWorks, but now it lies in the open
Yeah.
source, in the hands of the open source community to contribute and maintain. So everyone can jump on it and make the contribution.
Start contributing. Yep.
Sure. Good. Yeah. So with that, yeah, thank you for everyone for attending. I hope this has been a really informative session for you. And thanks, Team Bahmani, and please continue the work that you've been doing. That I guess we can wrap up this session.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I think the stream has